or concern. Whether you like President Trump or you don't, you should consider this. Was there a cover-up of President Trump's telephone conversation with a foreign president asking him for help to investigate a political enemy? Here's what the whistleblower charges in his official complaint. In the days following the phone call, I learned from multiple U.S. officials that senior White House officials had intervened to lock down all records of that phone call, especially the official word-for-word transcript of the call that was produced, as is customary, by the White House Situation Room. The set of actions underscored to me that White House officials understood the gravity of what had transpired in that call. White House officials told me they were directed by White House lawyers to remove the electronic transcript from the computer system in which such transcripts are typically stored for coordination, finalization, and distribution to cabinet-level officials. Folks, if this is what really happened, that's a cover-up, and that could become an even bigger problem for Republicans on the Hill who stand between Democrats and the president's remaining time in office. That's it for tonight. If you have any questions, we are here for you. Make sure to hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Just make sure to use the hashtag, the Q&A. I'm Bruce Johnson. Have a good evening.